I have a very special guest today, Jeff Joyner, and we're talking all about how entrepreneurs need to be good communicators. And so I'm really excited about this. Jeff, you are the author of a fantastic new book. I have it. Say It Like It Matters When It Matters. Welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Hey, listen, we got connected through Cedarville. I believe you're alum. I'd love to hear kind of a quick backstory about what brought you to Cedarville. And then even prior to the show, we were chatting a little bit about how you got focused on faith shortly after. But yeah, share with us.
All right. Happy to. I don't know if my story, how typical it is of a Cedarville grad. I feel it's got to be a little typical, but maybe not, the most thing. I grew up in a Christian home, went to a Christian high school, very small school, Baptist, church that had a school out back, 40 kids in my graduating class. My parents had 5 boys and really wanted us to go to Christian college. Strongly encouraged it. And so I'd been to Cedarville basketball camp a couple of times. I had an older brother who went there and it seemed as good as anything. So off I went to Cedarville. Looking back at it now, the kind of embarrassing part of my story is I was not going to Cedarville because it was a faith-based school. In fact, at the time, I wasn't living for God at all.
Wow, sure.
And I was the kid who sat in the back row at chapel every day for 4 years. Grudgingly took the required Bible coursework, was not a very high character person, wasn't very honest, to be frank. And, once I got there, started dating a girl and I thought about transferring, but I was, might as well stick with it. But really kind of fought against the spiritual message at Cedarville the whole time. And was kind of an average student, didn't go to class very much. I only went to the classes that interested me, which was a short list. And but I did do an extracurricular activity.
Wow.
You may know Cedarville has a speech team, a forensics team. And
I've
so
heard
I
that,
did.
yeah.
So I did speech competition, and we go around to other universities and colleges and do speech competition. And so I did informative speaking and persuasive speaking and impromptu speaking. And so graduated from college barely with a 2.75 GPA, which is like a D+.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
But my senior year of college, we were competing at the Ohio State Speech Championships.
Wow.
And little Cedarville College defeated Ohio State, Ohio University, Bowling Green, all the other big colleges. And one of the judges came up afterwards and said, wow, you're really extraordinary communicator, young man. I said, thank you. He said, do you know who I am? And I said, no. He said, I'm the chair of the communication department at Miami University.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's cool. And he said, have you ever thought about graduate school? And I said, no.
Yeah.
Never once did that occur to me. And he
That's
said,
right.
I'd like to offer you a full ride scholarship to come to Miami, get a master's degree, and work with our speech team.
What?
And I said, have you seen my grades? And he said, I don't care about your grades. And I said, I accept your offer.
Wow.
So, my wife, Kathy, who's my wife now, we met at Cedarville back in our freshman year. We graduated in 1991. Got married the same day that we graduated at Grace Baptist Church right there in Cedarville, Ohio. And off we went to Oxford, Ohio, where I was pursuing a master's degree. What I've learned about education is that the further you go, the easier it gets.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because now all the subjects are in my major, And
Yeah,
so
you like the classes.
Yeah, it was interesting to me. I was fascinated by it and felt like I was good at it. And so not only at Miami did I get the first 4.0 of my life and graduate top of my class, but I finished a 2-year program in about 9 months. And then they offered me a faculty position there, much to the shock of every professor at Cedarville College. And so I was the youngest full-time instructor ever hired at Miami University at age 22. Did that for 5 years. I taught classes in public speaking, mostly in the speech communication department. And I coached Miami's speech team and got that program turned around. We won the state championship 3 years in a row, defeating my beloved Dr. Roby over at Cedarville College. And actually we went twice to we won the world championship of speech, once in Athens, Greece, and once in London, England.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and so loved teaching. I felt like it was an easy job, and it was fun. It was very rewarding. Investing in these kids' lives. Didn't pay a lot of money, to be honest. And so after 5 years, left there and went to work in sales. Spent 10 years in sales and management with the Campbell Soup Company, working in food service sales and big companies like Gordon Food Service and Cisco and restaurant chains. And but a couple of years into that, as I was learning how to be better at selling, I really struggled at sales. There's a section in my communication book on selling skills because
in this book.
Yeah. I made the mistake of thinking that selling was all about speaking.
Right.
And well, I'll be good at that. Come to find out, sales is not about speaking. It's about listening and finding out what's important to your customers and helping them achieve that. And so as I got better at selling and started digging into what my customers really wanted, I discovered that a lot of them had a need for training more than a need for soup. I didn't have any customers that were up at night. Where can I get some high quality soup in a can? But a lot of them had a need for training. I had a customer who changed my whole career when she said, I look back on it and I give God the credit and the glory for kind of guiding this whole thing, but it sure seemed like chance at the time. But I had a customer who said, boy, I wish I could afford to hire a motivational speaker to come do some training for my employees about teamwork and attitude and customer service. And I said, hey, I can do some speaking. I got a whole room full of trophies that say I'm a good speaker. And so I started doing speaking and training for my clients and customers, really kind of as a sales strategy. Hey, you got a big restaurant chain, 200 unit chain. I'll come do some training on customer service and teamwork and execution and excellence, but you got to buy my products.
Oh yeah.
And the demand for that kind of grew and grew about 12, 13 years ago, just went on my own. And so I do speaking and training on people topics is really what I talk about, the people side of business. I've worked with more than 1,000 clients and organizations now in 49 different states. Love what I do. Feel like it, makes a difference, and helping people also, earn a good living for my family. And I feel like I've kind of found my sweet spot, in terms of, I'm sure you've seen the Venn diagram with, finding your purpose, which, so what are you good at? What makes a difference in the world? What will people pay you to do? And what do you enjoy? And praise the Lord, I find myself right smack in the middle of that.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, and I'm looking at your book here, and your book talks about I see public speaking, selling, and then essential conversations. And so here we are on an entrepreneur podcast. Do you think entrepreneurs need all three?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you how that book came to be is, as a professional speaker, most people that do what I do have a book. And I get asked all the time, oh, Jeff, that was so good. Do you have a book? No. Right. And I resisted writing a book.
Really?
Because it just seemed like such an egotistical thing to do. You know what the world really needs now in these dark times? Another book full of my ideas. And whether that's imposter syndrome or fear of the unknown, or, psychologists could diagnose all those things, I'm sure. But I resisted. I was, until last summer, I was speaking at a marriage conference in Nashville. And so great organization called Together in the Trades. And it's for married couples that are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And so landscape business owners, contractors, plumbers, people where usually the husband's out doing the work and the wife's doing the paperwork, but they're in business together, but they're also married, in love with each other. And so I was their keynote speaker. Wow. And the night we had a speakers meeting the night before, and the guy who was organizing the event said, Jeff, I got a challenge for you. He said, I don't think there's a really good modern book on communication skills. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is 100 years old now.
Wow.
And he said, I think if someone would write a book about public speaking and selling skills and, communication, and, I don't know if you ever have these moments where it just resonated in my spirit. And I was like, I went home and I prayed about it and talked to my wife about it. And so, that new book is kind of the fruit of that. But I do think I make an argument in the book that everyone needs to learn to be a better communicator.
And I would say everybody's in sales.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's in sales. When I talk to audiences, I'm like, hey, if you're married, you're in sales.
That's right.
you convinced that woman to sign a lifetime contract with you, and I hope you're like me that I shot for the moon and got way higher. I outkicked my
Yeah.
coverage in terms of and my wife. But yeah, everybody's in sales, and as an entrepreneur, you can't typically rely on TV advertising.
Sure.
Probably isn't going to be part of your strategy, at least not for a long time, right?
Yeah.
You have to be good at getting your message out, which I honestly, I think it's more important than ever to be able to organize your ideas, to express them effectively. And I talk a lot in the book about, and I read one of your books. I read The Deeper Path.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Found out
Wow.
right away in there that you and I are both disc golfers, which I don't meet a lot of
Yeah.
other, that I'm a member of the Professional Disc Golf Association. That's not going to
Wow.
impress very many of your listeners, but we
That's
might have to get
cool.
out and throw some discs
Yeah.
once the sun starts shining in
I hear
Ohio again.
Cedarville has a course. I haven't played it yet, but they now have a course.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I travel all around. I usually throw a couple of discs in my bag when I travel. And so this
Sure.
summer I spoke in Denver at a conference, and
Nice.
they had the highest rated mountain course in the world was
Oh
up
my
there
gosh.
outside of Colorado, and these beautiful aspen trees. But I digress. That's
I
not
get
what your
you.
listeners are
I
wanting to
get
hear
you.
about. And so, yeah, learning how to organize your ideas, how to
Mm,
work with people.
mm.
The public speaking part of my book is probably the most traditional. That's like
Yeah.
what you would learn in a speech class, right? How to
Yeah.
get over your fear of public speaking,
Right.
how to organize your ideas
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
the second section is about selling skills, and the lessons that I learned, when
Right.
I was working in selling, that really boiled down to, you want to separate yourself from your competitors. You have to think less about what's important to you and more about what's important to other people.
Yes.
And
That's
and
great.
become less of a vendor and more of a valued strategic resource for your customers. And to the degree that you can do that, whether you work a sales job or own your own business, anything you can offer your clients and customers that your competitors can't or won't.
Differentiation.
Total differentiation. And I got a chapter in there, going the extra mile. And I just was at an event last night and was talking about this, and everyone's heard that phrase, going the extra mile. Do you know where that phrase originated from?
I'm gonna say, was it the Roman with Jesus, the Roman road, where you had to go with a soldier? I don't know.
That's it. You're the first person I've asked who knew that.
Really?
That that back in, when Jesus was speaking his most famous message, the Sermon on the Mount, when he said, if someone asks you to go a mile, go with them 2 miles.
Yeah, as a Jew, you had to carry the Roman
Right.
baggage.
That's the part that I didn't know. That very unpopular law at the time, that any Roman soldier could make any Jewish citizen carry their stuff for a mile.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can only imagine. I've been in some awkward public speaking situations, and I'm picturing Jesus of Nazareth, right?
Wow.
The carpenter that everybody came to see. And what's his message to these people? Hey, when they ask you to carry their stuff for a mile, carry it 2. And people were probably like,
Right.
what? And, but why would you do that? Well, it's because when you do that, it shows that you're a different kind of person.
That's right.
And so that's kind of what the selling section is all about. I think I really tried to target it to be equally applicable to people that work in sales jobs or people that own, businesses of their own. But I definitely argue in the book that everybody's in sales. And then the third section of the book is essential conversations you'll have in your life.
Oh, yeah.
The first chapter is, it's the one I've gotten the most good feedback from. I just
Really?
launched this book in September, and it's a chapter on communicating with strangers.
Okay.
And it is my contention that if you are trying to accomplish anything with your life, you do not yet know enough people to make those dreams come true. You are going to need to assemble a team. Nothing extraordinary has ever been done in the history of the world by an individual working by themselves. And that the bigger your dreams and goals, the more you need to be out there talking to people. And since we're on a Cedarville University podcast, I will add what I didn't directly say in my book, but I'll say now, especially if you're a believer.
Yeah.
I think our country is full of wonderful, godly men who are at the gym with their headphones on, sitting on an airplane with their headphones on, I wonder why God isn't using me to make a difference in the world.
Gotcha.
Well, I think I know why. And so I think, and so there's a chapter on, hey, you need to start talking to people. You could be the person that someone else needs in their life. Someone else might be the person that you need in their life. I argue pretty strongly in my events that when you get out there and you start talking to people, you're going to find out that we're not as different as the
Yeah,
world is trying to say that we are.
exactly. Media is
Uh,
trying to position us and polarize us.
exactly right. So,
Yeah.
chapter on communicating with strangers, one on dealing with difficult people. One of my most popular conference seminars is called "I Think I'm Allergic to Nuts." Learning how
Yeah,
to work productively with people who drive you crazy.
that's
And
good.
and
Oh,
so
that's good.
there's and you've studied all this stuff.
Oh, I
There's a
love it.
mindset to that, which
Yeah.
is not everyone's like you, dude. But there's a skill set there too of how do you communicate with people that are different than you, have different priorities, and a lot of them have character flaws. You know,
Mm,
they're selfish, they're mean, they're bitter, they're whatever. And how do you navigate with these people? And if you're going to be a business owner, you're going to have a life full of those people. You know, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I talk about the most beautiful thing about, I mean, entrepreneurship is awesome in a lot of ways. Control your own destiny, put
yeah.
yourself on your own path, align your daily efforts with your purpose. But
Set
to
your own
me,
pricing, all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
all of that, you have some control, but there's obviously a lot of risk. There's a lot of downside. To me, the most rewarding part of entrepreneurism is the people.
Yeah,
You get to work with a lot of people
that's true.
in a lot of different ways. I would say the biggest downside of entrepreneurism
You work with people.
is the people.
Exactly.
You are going to have to work with people that
Mm,
are dishonest, people that are manipulative,
wow.
people who betray you.
Yeah.
And when that happens in the workplace, you know, you take it to HR. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
when that happens as an entrepreneur, you got to figure it out. So,
Oh, yeah, that's good.
communicating with strangers, dealing with difficult people. I have a chapter on communicating with your spouse or your
Yeah,
partner, and it's kind of, you know, 5 love languages, kind of figure out, you know, what your
sure.
partner's all about and what's important to them. You know, little advice in there like things to never say, like, hey, you need to calm down.
That's
It's
not a
been
good
my
one.
experience in the history of calming down, telling
Yeah.
someone to calm down has never made them calm down.
Oh, that's good.
There's a chapter on communicating with your kids.
Mm,
And the most rewarding experience of my life is that we have 3 young adult children.
mm.
And some of the things I learned about being a good communicator made me a better parent. Some of the things
Wow,
I learned about being a parent made me a better business owner. Some of the things I learned being a business owner made me a better spouse.
that's good.
And you know, you know, if someone reads the book, they'll see, but stories about how we positioned our kids to have a mindset of facing fears and overcoming failure and embracing failure. Um,
I see these topics, those ones you just mentioned, as real emotional intelligence.
oh, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one little quirky story I tell them, you know, one of the things I did with my kids when they were little, you think about what are you going to teach your kids? I taught my kids to tell stories.
Yeah.
So if you want to accomplish things with your life, you're going to have to learn to be a storyteller.
Mm.
Look at the best, you know, and I
Oh,
ruffle feathers sometimes when I use his example out in a corporate setting, but only a few feathers when I talk about no matter what your spiritual beliefs are. Most people would agree that the most successful teacher of all time was Jesus of Nazareth. And how did he teach? Almost exclusively by asking questions and telling stories.
nice.
And I'm convinced he must have drove the apostles crazy, right? When they're like, Master, tell us about heaven. And he's like, there was a woman who had a coin.
Right, right.
A man was walking down the street and they're like, oh, Jesus, you and
Yeah.
the stories, you know, just give
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I think that I used to play a game with my kids when they were, toddlers. Like, all right, I'm going to tell you 3 things. You tell me a story, a monkey, a trombone, and a rainstorm. And little 3-year-old Natalie would be like, one day there was, once upon a time, there was
Right.
a monkey named Clarence, and he wanted to be in the parade, but he didn't have an instrument, right? And now you fast forward, she's a senior in college. She's studying to be a teacher. She just did her student teaching,
Wow.
and she wants to be a high school social studies teacher, and
Mm.
she is a masterful
Yeah.
storyteller.
Oh, that's so good.
And yeah, and then the final chapter in this book is a chapter on self-talk. That, you know, the things of all the things you say every day, the things that are going to have the most impact on your future and your dreams are the things that you tell yourself.
Ooh, that's good. Never heard that, like, meaning a communication book with the last chapter on how you communicate to yourself.
Yeah, because those are the, you know, that subconscious mind
Oh,
that
yeah.
everything you've ever said about yourself your whole life. Oh, I'm such a loser. Oh,
Right.
I'm having a bad day. Oh, I can't, I'm not worthy, whatever.
You
That
become your
is
thoughts. Yeah.
You know, and I'm not a psychologist, and so I try
Right.
not to get too deep on it because I'm not that deep. But it's the lies that we've believed, you know, kind of that chatterbox,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're familiar with that idea that is just constantly, you know, and it's been my experience that I don't know if this is biblical or not, frankly, but it's been my experience. You don't defeat negative thoughts with positive thoughts.
Mm,
You defeat negative thoughts with words.
interesting. Yeah.
And so when I learned in my life to start like, no, you know what? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There's nothing I can't do if I'm not willing to communicate. Every day, it's helped me become more disciplined. Which, from the little bit I've looked into about you, you know, riding your bike in the Swiss Alps and stuff, you know, you strike me
Yeah.
as a disciplined dude.
Right.
And I will tell you, I'm not wired that way. It's a daily battle. It's a grind for me. My weight's been up and down in my life, and the hits on your self-image when your pants don't fit,
Sure, sure.
and then for me, it's added that when I'm overweight, then I'm going speaking to an audience somewhere, and I'm convinced everyone in the audience is like, "Oh, look, the fat motivational speaker. What's he here to
Right,
teach us?"
right.
And so learning how to get your mind around, you know, and there's anyone who you know, I don't know what percentage of the people listening to this podcast are believers and have put their faith in Jesus, but my book, it's not a Christian book. It's really written for
Sure.
anybody, but there's a undercurrent of
Yeah.
truth that
Oh,
I
yeah.
do think there is, capital T truth.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're not worthless. You have worth. I think, you know, even dealing with people. I was just talking to one of my daughters who, you know, she's in her early 20s, and one day she's yes, the next day she's like, oh yeah, you know, and it's
Right.
and I told her, I said, you know, my experience is the most successful people I know,
Mm,
and that's part of where I feel I'm coming from. That might add some value to some people. That I've met hundreds of thousands of people.
wow.
I mean, most people go to work and see the same people over and over every
Right.
day.
You're
Last week I
traveling.
was in last week I was in Anderson, Indiana, and then Ventura, California, and then Syracuse, New York, and then Tampa, Florida.
Wow.
And every place I went, I met people at hotels, on airplanes, at the conferences, and so I meet a lot of people who are ragingly happy and a lot of people who are miserable and everywhere in between.
Yeah.
And I get talking to them. And I just started my second book, which is going to dig into more of that stuff. But I told my daughter, you know, these ups and downs,
Yeah.
every successful person I've ever
Mm,
met, and everyone defines successful differently, has learned how to level out
mm,
those ups and downs.
that's good.
And they only get so and they only
Yeah.
get so boo.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I think as believers, we have an advantage in that. If that's true, that's a component of success, is to learn to regulate your
Yeah.
emotional
Self-control. Right.
responses
Yeah.
to things going on in your life. If that's true, I think you have an advantage if the
Mm,
Holy Spirit lives in you, right? Because I only get so high before I say, hey, you know what? I don't get the glory for this. This is God working in
yeah.
my life. And
That's
I
great.
only get so low without saying, well, God must be doing something great with me. You know,
That's
that
good.
hey, I'm still the kid of a king and it's going to be okay. And I've read the end of the book. And so excuse me. I do think and I hope you get a chance to read the book. I know I just mailed it to you, so you probably haven't read it
Yeah.
yet. But I hope you'll see in there
Mm,
there's a lot of truth. And that's kind of the speaking that I do. I
yeah.
speak almost exclusively in secular settings.
Sure.
You know, one of my things that rankled me when I was going to Cedarville University is I don't know if they do this anymore, but 30 years ago, they used to talk a lot about full-time Christian service.
Yeah.
And
They've gotten better at that.
and
Where
the
the,
admirable warriors who are preparing for a life in full-time Christian
yeah.
service, which had a very narrow definition. It was pastors,
Missionary.
missionaries, Christian school teachers,
There you go.
the end.
Yeah.
Those people are full-time Christian servants, and the rest of you
Yeah. No,
are
they
just
call they call it, BAM, business as ministry, and it's totally shifted, so
hey, there you go.
it's pretty
And
cool.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm not surprised either
Yeah,
because that's kind of an. But I used to sit there and I'm like, so if I'm not a pastor, I'm not, you know, what am I
right.
part-time Christian
Yeah,
service? You know, do you put that on your taxes?
yeah.
You know, and
That's right. I
but
like that.
but we all have our different niches. And I play racquetball with one of my buddies who's a Lutheran minister, right? And
Okay.
it's so funny listening to him, the challenges that he faced. It sounds just like entrepreneurism,
Yeah,
the
and pastors
politics.
really are. Yeah, I mean, you know, my dad was a church planner. I say church planners are the Christian entrepreneurs right there, because I mean they're going into a new territory, new product, new marketing.
It's exactly
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
exactly right. And so what I try to do with my speaking and training in the book too is I'm talking to the world, but I'm
mm,
putting truth out there, right?
I
That when
like it.
I'm talking about how to deal with difficult people, but we're
Yeah,
getting in there the message of the golden rule, right?
totally,
And the key
totally.
to happiness is to take your eyes off yourself and serve other people.
Yeah,
And I feel like I'm reaching a segment, I hope, it's my
yeah,
intention, that frankly is not coming to church.
that's right.
The world's not coming to church. The world's heard the Jesus story.
Yeah,
There's not a single person in America who hasn't heard the Jesus story. I would argue that often they haven't heard it from someone they respect.
mm,
And even less often have they heard it from someone who served them before they preached to them
oh yeah,
the way that
that's right.
Jesus did,
That's right.
right?
Yeah,
Jesus showed
yeah,
up. Let's get you people healed and fed. Then we'll talk about
I love it.
the kingdom of heaven. And so, but I had a woman last week, I was in California, and this wonderful woman came up and she slipped a little piece of paper in my hand.
Yeah.
And she goes, I could tell you were a Christian.
Oh, that's so good.
I said, oh my gosh, thank you. It's the greatest compliment. And I read this piece of paper and it said, you speak the words of Jesus. And I said,
Yeah.
oh, that melts my heart. I said, I think I'm going to
What
put
did
that
it
on my
work
business
for?
card. Jeff Joyner, he speaks the words of Jesus.
Hey, listen, that's a huge encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
so,
listen, where I want to plug your website. So I can't wait to read this book, but your website is literally jeffjoyner.com.
yep. JeffJoyner.com. People can find me all over social media. Jeff Joyner Training on Facebook.
Yeah.
I started one of my getting out of my comfort zone projects during COVID. You know, you talk about the ups and downs of entrepreneurism. When
Yeah.
COVID hit, all of my events got canceled.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You got
Like
to reinvent yourself real quick.
several $100,000 of
Wow.
contracted, booked events.
It's crazy.
And if you'd have told me 5 years ago that the conference industry might go away, I'd say, you're crazy. How's that going to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
But it did.
Pandemic.
And I had a buddy who's a big YouTuber, and he called me up and he said, I can't believe you don't have a YouTube channel, all your stories. And I go, well, I like a live audience where I can see their
Right.
reaction and interact. And he said, aren't you the guy always talking about getting out of your comfort zone and trying new things? And I'm like, shut up. But I started a YouTube channel called An Epic Life, An Epic Life.
Yeah.
And my argument is that an epic life isn't a perfect life, but it's a life that's dedicated to try to make a difference in the lives of others.
That's so good.
And so anyone who's on YouTube can check that out if they like.
I love it. Well, listen, we got to roll. I got students classes, you know it. And but Jeff, this was fantastic. I think it's a great story about Cedarville as well, how you were there, but not really there, but God didn't leave you and brought you back around, and you're teaching. It's just a really cool story. So folks, I'm going to encourage you, if you're in sales, which you all are, and if you're a communicator, which you all are, get Jeff's book, jeffjoyner.com. Jeff, thanks for being here today.
Awesome. Hey, and one last thing, I'll run you over time. I'm not careful, but we talked about this before, but I wanted to finish that story. I wasn't living for the Lord when I was at Cedarville, but after I got out of school and I started a business of my own in my spare time, I met a guy who was offered to mentor me.
Sure.
He worked with Amway Corporation. I'm sure you're familiar with them, and offered to teach me to start one of those businesses. And I realized pretty quick I needed mentorship.
Yeah.
And I got connected with some godly men who led me back to a relationship with God. And so entrepreneurship really is even more than a lifetime of high quality Christian education. Entrepreneurship is the thing that drove me back to a relationship with Jesus.
I like that.
Very thankful for
powerful. That's a good way to close. Yeah, I'll point people to that podcast right here. Well, Jeff, thank you. I'm glad God used entrepreneurship to get you back on the straight and narrow.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Great connecting with you. And let me know if I can ever do anything for you.
All right, folks, check out jeffjoyner.com. We'll see you on the next episode.